Hey everyone, here for the second part of my Tyranid Tactica review of the 5th edition Codex, just before the 6th edition Codex comes out. So this time we're going to take a look at the troops, fast attack, and heavy support sections. I'm just going to go through and review them. So starting off, we're going to go and take a look at the Tyranid troop section. Now there's a couple units that I didn't review, like my previous video. That's just due to me having not used them enough to give an informed opinion on them. So if you do know more about these units, feel free to comment in the comment section, let us know. So starting off, we're going to take a look at the Tyranid Termagaunts. So the obvious strength of the Termagaunts is the fact that bringing a single unit of Termagaunts at minimum size, you can bring a Trygon as a troop, which is an extreme advantage over your opponent, as you have a monstrous creature which can now score and also spawn more Termagants. And also too, the Tyrgon also provides huge buffs to your already spawned or purchased Termagant units on the table, such as having Toxin Sacs on the Tyrgon will buff them over to the Termagants as well as Adrenal Glands. So it's a pretty good upgrade and makes that Termagants rather deadly. Another advantage with the Termagants is the fact the upgrades are pretty cheap. It's only 1 point for either the Adrenal Glands or Toxin Sacs. They also are great too for pod drops, so sticking them in a Mycetic Spore and dropping them off in your opponent's deployment behind some vehicles with Devours. I believe it's a unit of 20 can pump out 60 shots, so something like that, you're almost guaranteed to at least glance the vehicle to death on the rear. Now the weaknesses of the Termagant, obviously the 6+ save, it's kind of a hindrance, and also not having fleet is kind of a disadvantage when it comes to making those charges. But overall, though, the Termagant, the standard Tyranid troop unit to use in 5th edition, especially with the Termagants. So now we're going to take a look at the Hormagaunt. So the Hormagaunt is the close combat version of the Termagant, basically. Stat lines are the exact same. So taking a look at the strengths of the Hormagaunt, obviously one of the strengths that follows through with the Termagant is cheap upgrades on the Hormagaunt. It is 1 point for the Toxin Sacs and Adrenal Glands again, so it gives a pretty cheap upgrade to these units to give them poison, so you can take down those big monstrous creatures with poison attacks. And one of the weaknesses now is they're slow to get across the table. They have a 6+ save. The cost is a little high compared to the Termagants, and it also is a shooty edition. Now what I mean by that is 6th edition overall kind of favors shooting armies, so Hormagaunts tend to get gunned down rather easily. So when comparing them to Termagants, being that Termagants obviously give you the choice to bring Termagants as troops, Termagants are almost the obvious choice to take between the two. But when run in large broods of say 20, two groups of 20, usually you can get one to combat successfully, and usually when they get to combat, if they're equipped with Adrenal Glands or have Toxin Sacs, they're usually guaranteed to take care of whatever you've been sent out to target. So between the two, I prefer the Termagants myself. I've used Hormagaunts every now and then. I've had a bit of success, but to each their own on that. So next we're going to take a look at the Genestealer. Genestealer in 5th edition version, like actual 5th edition of 40k, was solid, being that you could attack out of coming in of reserves, but being now in 6th edition, they've lost that ability. That's one very big weakness the Genestealers now have, is not being able to assault when outflanking. One of their strengths is the fact that they do have the Broodlord. He acts as a great assassin character, being that he is a character he can challenge. His stats are pretty good. He can also take 2 psychic power, so I mean if you roll on Biomancy, get Iron Armor, Warp Speed, you can make him quite a tough opponent to deal with, plus he's great for assassinating other characters that you may need to take down. And also, just like the Hormagaunts, Genestealer suffers from being a close combat unit in a shooty edition of 40k, so it makes it hard to get them up the table. Now it's not impossible, being that they have Infiltrate, which can help them get up the table rather quick to the opponent, but being that they only have a 5+ save, most things that will shoot at them unless they use cover effectively, and if there is cover on the table, will gun them down pretty easily. So overall, Genestealer is not the greatest troop choice in this edition of the Codex, well, in combination with the 6th edition rule set. So hopefully we'll see how the 6th edition Tyranid Codex takes care of them. So moving forward now, we got Tyranid Warriors. Now this unit here is kind of controversial. It depends who you talk to in terms of effectiveness with the Warrior. I've used them and had some success with them, but then again it depends on who you're playing and how you use them. I usually run my Warriors as a backfield Synapse unit, so that leads right into their strengths. There is obviously they're a Synapse unit, so they can sit back and babysit Biovores or whatever else you got in the backfield. Plus they have 3 wounds, and being a troops choice, they're a solid objective holder. But then that comes over into the weaknesses now, and this is where the Warriors kind of get into a bit of a debate: are they good, are they bad? As being that they're toughness 4. And with all the strength 8 that's available nowadays, with all the new armies, well, all armies in general, but even with the new armies that are coming out, strength 8 is kind of in abundance, so Warriors definitely can get taken out easy, and that moves over into their cost. Overall, they're not badly priced. I'm not trying to say that they're overpriced or underpriced, but being that they're toughness 4, you do have to take in consideration of cost if they just get hit with the strength 8 pie plate and takes them out, so then that's a solid chunk of your army dead just with one shot. So you do got to play them smart, use cover, or just find a role that suits you. But again, compared to the Trygon and Termagaunt troop options, it's kind of hard to say no to the Termagaunt and Trygon. So that is the troop section of the Tyranid Codex. So now we're going to take a look at the Tyranid Fast Attack. So first up on the Tyranid Fast Attack is the Tyranid Gargoyle. So taking a look at the strengths of the Gargoyle, one of the biggest things they have is Blinding Venom, which makes Gargoyles great for taking down, say, for example, Wraith Knights who have toughness 8, or Riptides toughness 6, or whatever else out there that has a high toughness. So Blinding Venom is great for just getting that auto wound and helping to take them down. And again, like the Termagants and Termagants, Gargoyles also come with the exact same cheap upgrades for Toxin Sacs and Adrenal Glands, which makes them great defining them in the role, I guess is what I'm getting at. If you take Toxin Sacs, they're great at jumping across the table quickly to take down like that Wraith Knight or that Riptide in close combat, being that they can get poisoned. Or if you just want them to glance a vehicle to death, you can give them Adrenal Glands. And another thing they're great for is screening, being that the game uses true line of sight. So if you put a large unit of Gargoyles in front of, say, your Trygon or your Warrior unit, you can protect them with that. And also speed is great. They can jump across the table. Now the really true weakness with Gargoyles, in my opinion, the only really big weakness is they're vulnerable to blast, which when hit with one of those, it can take them out as their bases are kind of bigger. But overall, I must say Gargoyles are one of the better units in this codex, great for screening. The only disadvantage is not being troops that can't hold objectives. But other than that, it's a great unit. So now let's take a look at the Tyranid Raveners. So Raveners' strengths are definitely their speed, being that they're beasts. They can fly across the table, they ignore terrain for moving, and then also for charging, although they do strike at initiative 1 if they still charge through, but they do ignore it. So it's a lot easier to make that charge, being that they have fleet as well. And Raveners, another huge strength, is they're extremely strong against non-marine equivalent units. Now they are good at taking down Marines, but being that Marines have a 3+ save, it's not guaranteed that the Raveners will take them down. And then when the Marines hit back, being that the Raveners only have a 5+ save, it only takes a few solid rounds of combat for the Marines to really strike down the Raveners if the Raveners can't get through their 3+ save. But against weaker infantry units such as Dark Elder or just General Guardsmen, Raveners are excellent at getting through to them, being that Guardsmen and Dark Elder, for example, only have a 5+ save. So they're great for taking out large units like that. Weaknesses is limited upgrades. You can really only give them Rending Claws or some shooting attacks, but being that they're generally close combat, I prefer to run them with the close combat options as compared to shooting, although shooting is a good option. It depends on your style of play. And also that they have a 5+ save, and again, that being toughness 4 like the Warriors, they suffer from the same weaknesses as the Warriors. So next we're going to go and have a look at the Tyranid Shrike. Now Tyranid Shrikes, I haven't used them a lot. When I did use them, I must say I wasn't overly impressed with them. I feel there's better places to spend your points in this codex. The strengths, obviously, their speed, being able to jump from the tree. And again, looking at the weaknesses, they suffer from the same weaknesses as the warriors, being toughness 4 and having a 5+ save. Or, well, compared to warriors, their save is worse. Now, they do cost a bit more than warriors, so really you're just paying for the speed. All the upgrades, I believe, are the exact same if I remember right. But overall, I'm not too impressed with Shrikes for their point cost. I think they're kind of high for what they do. And with the points you spend here, you may as well honestly get warriors and stick them in the backfield, get synapse and let your monstrous creatures like the Termagaunt or Flyer move up so you don't have anyone back there babysitting those Biobores or whoever's in your backfield holding objectives. So the next fast attack we're going to have a look at here is the Tyranid Harpy. Again, like the Shrikes, I rarely use the Harpy, being that it is one of our few flyers, but when compared to the Flyrant, who I discussed in our previous video, the Flyrant just outshines the Harpy in every single way. Now the strengths of the Harpy obviously is speed, being it's a flying monstrous creature, and also that it's a solid anti-infantry unit. Now the weaknesses though is what really outweighs its strengths. Its cost is kind of high for what it can do. It is also toughness 5 and only has a 4+ save. So when that Harpy gets grounded, it's generally going to die pretty quick. And also too, most armies nowadays will sit inside tanks, such as troops, so it's hard for the Harpy to do anything, being it's also strength 5, so its vector strikes aren't quite the strongest. So again, compared to the Flying Hive Tyrant, it's not a very strong air unit. Against infantry it's good, but for the points you may as well take Biobores, honestly. So overall, not too impressed with the Harpy. Alright, so now it's time for the last section of their Codex, and that's Tyranid Heavy Support. So starting off, we're going to take a look at one of the most iconic Tyranid figures, and that is the Carnifex. So strength of the Carnifex in this edition is obviously strength 9 is a solid plus for the Carnifex, and one of the other strengths of it is the ability to equip the Twin Link Brain Leech Devourers. These obviously pack quite a punch, being that they can pump out 12 shots twin linked at strength 6, so they're overall solid, and especially when dropped in a pod, that makes a Carnifex a great threat. Now the weaknesses. This edition, the Carnifex is pretty overcosted, and it makes it rough for when trying to make broods. They're only 4 wounds, which makes them vulnerable to a lot of high strength, low AP shooting. And they're kind of slow, and being that they're kind of limited to their builds, being they're overcosted, it makes it hard to bring different types of Carnifexes aside from the Brain Leech Devourer version. So overall, the Carnifex, he lacks kind of a punch in this edition. So now we're going to take a look at the Trygon. Strength of the Trygon, he's a strong close combat unit, being that on the charge I believe it is 7 attacks the Trygon gets in addition to the Hammer of Wrath. Being that it can smash, it can get a lot of attacks, obviously because it's a monstrous creature, and also the fact that you can equip the Trygon with Synapse by making it a prime. Now the weaknesses of the Trygon is, one is it's kind of slow and it's a big target, so it does make the Trygon targeted rather quickly sometimes as it goes up the table. One of the other weaknesses is the Subterranean Assault rule. Being that the big issue with this rule is when the Trygon comes up, you place a marker for units to come out of reserve in, but this only applies in the following turn. So generally most reserve units come out on the same turn generally, because you don't have too much reserve. So it's kind of a useless rule. But overall, the Trygon's a solid choice for heavy support. It's kind of a big target, but it does pack up quite a punch. So next on our list is the Moloch. Moloch's kind of underwhelming. I've used it several times. I got a good feel for what the Moloch can do. Obviously the big strength is the Terror from the Deep attack, which is the blast when the Moloch comes crawling up. It hits everything with the blast marker, and then it comes crawling out and pushes everything out of the way. Now the big issues with this is it's unreliable. So the Moloch himself is kind of unreliable because you don't know if you don't make the reserve roll to come in. That's another turn he's off the table. Plus when he comes up onto the table, he has to sit there, then the next turn he has to burrow, then the next turn he comes up, and also the fact he can scatter. So, and also on top of this, the Moloch's fairly expensive and also slow if you do keep him on the table. So overall, he's kind of underwhelming. He's definitely a cool unit to use. So in friendly games, he's great, but in a more competitive environment, you generally won't see too many Molochs, but there are some lists that do incorporate them. But overall, not too impressed with the Moloch this edition. Next up is the Tyranid Biovore. Biovore in is one of my favorite units for the heavy support options. It's great being that it's a strong anti-infantry unit, especially when you make broods of 2+ Biovores, or 2 to 3, being that they're barrage, so that's a lot of blasts coming down on the opponent if you score a couple direct hits. So it can definitely clear out large blobs, and they're also cheap for what they can do when compared to, say, the Harpy, who kind of fills a similar role. Now, weaknesses is the 4+ save obviously is a bit of a weakness, so you definitely want to keep the Biovore in cover, and also the fact that it's only toughness 4, so those strength 8 hits can clear them out pretty easily, and they do have a large base, so those large strength 8 blasts are definitely an issue. So definitely Biovores need to stay in cover, but overall they're by far one of the best heavy support options, so hopefully the next Codex we'll see them stick around. Next up on our list is the Tyranid Tyrannofex. Now, really the only strength of this unit is that it's a strong anti-infantry unit, being that it has a torrent acid spray attack. In the games I have used the Tyrannofex, I only ran it with the acid spray. I did try the rupture cannon once, and that brings us over to one of the weaknesses of the Tyrannofex, is it's unreliable. Being that it's ballistic seal 3, the rupture cannon is also I think it's like a 40-point upgrade or 30 points or something, on top of the already high cost of the Tyrannofex, so it makes it a pretty costly unit for 2 strength 10 shots at ballistic seal 3, so it's kind of unreliable in that manner. It is good for anti-infantry, but the cost kind of outweighs the ability there. You may as well take the Biovores for the price of it and just use the multiple barrages from having a brood of 3. So overall the Tyrannofex is kind of underwhelming. It's really just the points issue that holds the Tyrannofex from being fielded a little bit more often. And last for the heavy support is Old One-Eye. So obviously the huge strength that jumps out at you with Old One-Eye is a strength 10, so that's a strength 10 Hammer of Wrath hit when he charges, which is great. Regeneration is also great with Old One-Eye, being that for each wound he loses you roll a dice. I think it's a 5-up, he gets one of his wounds back. And he's insanely strong in close combat, being that every hit he gets confers another extra hit you get to roll for, so he definitely packs a huge punch. Now his weaknesses is obviously he's initiative 1, so he does strike last unless he charges, but if he's being charged it makes him kind of vulnerable, and he's also only 4 wounds, and he's also kind of slow, so getting him up the table makes him vulnerable to shooting, so if you get a lot of shots coming Old One-Eye's way, generally can take him down, but if you do provide some other targets around him, you can get Old One-Eye up the table and make him pretty effective. So overall, he's a good choice. So last but not least, we got one more unit to go over, and that's Tyranid Transport. So the transport in this Tyranid Codex is the Mycetic Spore. Obviously the huge strength of Mycetic Spore is a deep striking monstrous creature that can carry other Tyranids and drop them in. So this is extremely effective, say dropping in Zoanthropes, Termagaunts with Devours, or even one Carnifex with the Twin Link Brainwitch Devours. It's also fairly cheap, and also the fact it is a monstrous creature, so it does provide the line breaker victory point if it can stay alive until the end of the game in the enemy's deployment zone. So definitely it's a great option. Rumor has it this won't be sticking around to the next Codex, so I guess time will tell, but if not, it's unfortunate. It's great fluff-wise, it kind of fits with the whole Tyranid theme, but overall it was fun to use it while it lasted, and really enjoyed using the Mycetic Spore. It was great for getting in the enemy's backfield and clearing off vehicles or whatever else. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe to our channel and comment if there's anything else I missed, or if you feel like there's anything else to add. So up next, once I get a chance to read the new Tyranid 6th edition Codex, I'll do my initial thoughts on that, and we'll go through each of the units and see how they change. So again, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.